Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here this morning. Today, the Citrus County Sheriff's Office is going to announce the results from a major undercover operation that we entitled Operation Flip the Script. And this operation was completed by the Citrus County Sheriff's Office Tactical Impact Unit detectives and the great team that we have in our Criminal Investigation Division. This investigation led to major breakthroughs in combating illicit narcotics trafficking and organized crime in Citrus County. Numerous arrests have already been made by our detectives and our patrol deputies, and there are other arrests pending across the state of Florida. We've also seized 47 vehicles, illicit narcotics, a whole host of other documents that we are pouring through right now, and additionally, 160 firearms, 156 of those firearms that were stolen from a burglary that occurred in Hernando County several years back. The number of arrests will continue to grow in the weeks and months ahead, so stay tuned as our detectives continue to pour through these documents and continue to obtain warrants from our state attorney's office and our partners at the federal level. Operation Flip the Script began when detectives from our Tactical Impact Unit received credible information that the Tri-County Medical Center in Crystal River, a licensed primary care facility, was illegally operating as a pain management clinic. Through the clinic, they illicitly distributed 39,905 controlled substance prescriptions over the course of its operations, and most of those prescriptions were for opioid-based medications that were flowing right into our community in Citrus County. This total pill count comes to more than 3,413,000 pills, which are represented by these 16 cardboard boxes to my right over here. Opioid-based medications such as oxycodone have a high probability of causing addiction among people who abuse these drugs. In fact, the amount of oxycodone and methadone alone that we seized could kill more than 1.2 million people here in the state of Florida, which is more than 7 times the size of Citrus County's population. Our investigation revealed that the medical center's owner, Ernest Bernard Scriven, also known as B, orchestrated a scheme to obtain prescriptions for controlled substances and then distribute them illegally across the community and across the state. Scriven conspired with an employee of the medical facility, Kendra Lynn Johnson, one of the suspects identified over here on this board, to send multiple pharmacies these prescriptions all across the state for patients that were not legitimate patients, patients that had never even been seen by the doctor. In turn, Scriven and Johnson would receive cash payments from buyers and then pocket that money and use it for continuing their illicit trade in narcotics. The script was flipped on June 12, 2024, when multiple search warrants were served across the county, one at the Tri-County Medical Center in Crystal River and another at Ernest Bernard Scriven's residence in Lecanto. This was indeed a coordinated effort between state and local partners, as well as the great men and women from the Citrus County Sheriff's Office who brought this operation to a screeching halt as soon as we arrested Scriven and as soon as we opened up the doors of that clinic that day, when detectives from our agency and detectives from the Drug Enforcement Administration descended upon that illegal clinic to shut down its operations. In total, thanks to the great support from our state attorney's office, and Mr. Gladson will speak here in just a minute, 27 search warrants were served trying to dismantle years of illicit activity in which Scriven coordinated and directed as the mastermind behind this operation. So far, we have also seized 47 vehicles, including boats, trailers, cars, trucks, even a semi-tractor trailer, and brought those things to our impound lot to secure them. And if you looked at the parking lot out in front of us, there's 35 parking spots. So we would fill all of those parking spots out in front of the sheriff's office, plus that little circle up there in the corner off to my right with all of the stolen vehicles, and we'd have to start parking vehicles on the grass to get them into this area so that you could take photographs of them. So we've got them on that board over there that you see that talks a little bit about some of the stuff that we've brought to evidence. We have identified 8 of those vehicles as stolen, and we will return them to their rightful owners as soon as possible. And as you also look through these here, we have vehicles that had the vehicle identification numbers swapped, meaning totaled vehicles that were in junkyards had their VIN numbers removed, and those stolen VIN numbers were repurposed. Those VIN numbers were repurposed so that Scriven could put them onto stolen vehicles or misappropriated vehicles that we were still trying to determine who the rightful owner might be. Several of the vehicles have an open repossession order. A great many of them have active liens. Some of them belong to deceased persons, and quite frankly, we may never find who the true owner is on some of these vehicles that are out there. Among the 160 firearms, as I mentioned, 156 of them were stolen from a burglary in 2019 in Hernando County. An associate of Scriven, David Alfonso Enriquez, was identified in connection to the burglary that occurred in Hernando County. In total, to summarize all of the things that we have seized thus far through Operation Flip the Script, we have retrieved 1,127 doses of oxycodone, 332 doses of methadone, over 1,000 doses of other illegal drugs and controlled substances, 15 grams of methamphetamine, 4 grams of fentanyl, which is enough to kill 2,000 people, 160 pounds of cannabis, 160 firearms, 47 vehicles. And due to the magnitude of this operation, detectives still have stacks upon stacks of documents that they must pour through to determine if there's probable cause to levy additional charges against these suspects. The following suspects are currently facing state charges: Ernest Bernard Scriven, 46, of Lecanto, an 8-time convicted felon who was the manager and owner of the pain clinic. He's charged with racketeering, trafficking in oxycodone, 3 counts, unlawful use of a two-way communication device, 2 counts, trafficking in methamphetamine, trafficking in fentanyl, possession of cannabis with intent to distribute, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon at his residence, and then possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, 157 counts, because we found 156 firearms that were stolen in a search warrant in Crystal River. Originally had a bond set at none. Kendra Lynn Johnson, his co-conspirator, 35, of Inverness. She's charged with 6 counts of trafficking in oxycodone, unlawful use of a two-way communication device. Her bond was originally set at none as well. Shalina Tashaka Scriven, 44, of Crystal River, trafficking in oxycodone, conspiracy to traffic oxycodone, and her bond was originally set at none. And last but certainly not least, a well-known criminal in our community, David Alfonso Enriquez, 37, of Crystal River, trafficking in cannabis, grand theft of a firearm of 156 count. His bond was originally set at none. And, you know, one of the things we've talked about for nearly 8 years now is that if you're going to sell drugs in our county, we're going to come after you. And shielding a limitless illicit narcotics operation behind the same laws and the regulations that are designed to protect our citizens and provide them essential medications and services from the medical community is a despicable act for Scriven to be engaged in. From day one as your sheriff, my statement has always been clear. Illicit narcotics have no place in Citrus County. If you're going to do that in my county, I get to set the time and place for your wake-up call. And we make calls all times of the day, regardless of what's going on outside. Ernest Bernard Scriven, we found you. CCSO's finest brought you to justice. And if there's anybody else out there associated with him, we're coming after you. And if you think you can get away with that in Citrus County, you better think twice, because we've got a great team of detectives and patrol deputies, and we're backed up by the best state attorney and the best United States Attorney General for the great state of Florida all across our great country. Our agencies do an outstanding job, but we couldn't do it without our state and federal partners, and we're immensely blessed here in Citrus County to work shoulder to shoulder with these outstanding professionals. I'd like to turn the mic over now to our great state attorney, Mr. Bill Gladson. Bill.
Good morning, everyone. I couldn't have said it better myself, Sheriff. The amount of work that is represented in these poster boards and these boxes is just a fraction of what the sheriff alluded to is going to be uncovered as this investigation continues. Months' work of time went into this, and what you see is the result of crime prevention. So it's one thing for patrol to respond to cases and respond to calls. It's an entirely different thing to be proactive as an agency, seek out where the problems are, and solve those problems by arrest. And that's what's happened in this case. I've never seen anything representing this volume of pills in my 25 years as a prosecutor. I think it's important now. I'll tell you a little bit about our main defendant's criminal history, and the sheriff had mentioned it, his current charges, but he's got 2 prior convictions of sale of cocaine, 2 prior convictions for possession of cocaine, 1 conviction for battery of a law enforcement officer, 3 different felony driving suspended convictions. And what that does for us as prosecutors, and Florida essentially has a 3-strike rule. It's a habitual felony offender rule. And if he qualifies, and he does, as a habitual felony offender, it gives us the option and the opportunity to seek essentially a life sentence for someone who's convicted of trafficking and racketeering and all the charges the sheriff listed. So I think that that the community needs to understand that, and I hope they do, because as the sheriff alluded to, Citrus County is no nonsense when it comes to prosecution, is no nonsense when it comes to crimes. We have some of the highest prison rates for the cases that we prosecute around the state, coming just out of Citrus County. Based on its size, and I've said this before, it outpunches its weight class every single time. So I was talking to one of our prosecutors who's been working on this with the sheriff's office before we came out here, and I was, describe for me the operation. How's it been going? Because they've been keeping me up to date. And he said it like this. He said, this clinic was like the Candyman. It's a doctor that you can go and pretty much get anything. We're talking about oxycodone, we're talking about marijuana, scripts for all kinds of different drugs. And it really was an all-inclusive, like one-stop shop, because as you heard the sheriff allude to, we've got issues with, or evidence of fraudulent titles with vehicles. You've got all kinds of fraud. You've got theft, you've got possession of firearms. So I mean, this really was a concerted effort by the sheriff's office to shut down an entire criminal enterprise. And we thank them for the hard work, because honestly, these men and women work harder than I think people realize. And with that, I'll turn it over. Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
And now I'd like to turn the microphone over to our great Attorney General, Ashley Moody. Thank you, gentlemen.
Sheriff. Well, Citrus County certainly is fortunate to have the folks standing up here today focused on making sure they're putting bad actors behind bars and protecting the most vulnerable in this community. First, let me just say thank you to ASAC Ferguson and the DEA for being great partners in this case. We always appreciate your partnership throughout the state of Florida, and specifically during an opioid crisis, and today is no different. And both these gentlemen, State Attorney Bill Gladson, always going above and beyond what one would expect from a state attorney, even just agreeing to serve on a statewide council on human trafficking, which is going to take up a lot of his time and effort, and I'm so grateful to you, sir, for that. And this sheriff, he said it pretty bluntly and strongly, and I think it's true. He's not going to tolerate drug trafficking in this county, and he's going to be aggressive about it. What I like about this sheriff is he's not afraid of hard work, and he said it up here. He said, no matter what is going on, and I think that many of you saw recently during the middle of a storm, he himself out working, pulled over someone that was suspected of a DUI, always engaged in protecting this community. Doesn't matter that he's the top cop in this county, he's still going to be making those arrests and protecting the community members. And I thought that was just indicative of the type of man that is your sheriff here. And today's announcement is no different. This is a classic pill mill on steroids. And we saw these when we were first starting to see the trends in opioid prescribing. We stamped them out here in Florida. Don't forget, at one point, Florida was known as the pill mill capital of the United States, 10 years ago. And we did a lot to change that, changing legislation, stepping up law enforcement efforts, going after these pill mills and the doctors that were just pawns in the scheme, sometimes leading them themselves. but they haven't gone away. And today's just a great example of that. While we have targeted them aggressively, certainly, the model of taking basically a drug trafficker and inserting a drug trafficker in a business of handing out drugs to people that are addicted and are drug seeking, that's what you see here. And it also spiraled into other criminal activity, and you can see that by the ill-gotten gains that were seized by the sheriff's office and the law enforcement officers on the day they executed these search warrants, from stolen vehicles to drugs to guns. The list goes on and on. This is a classic example of criminals inserting themselves into a business and exploiting it. These cases are difficult. They are difficult to develop. They are difficult to secure evidence. And I commend, they're not standing up here with us today, but the lead officers on this case and the investigators, the detectives, everyone that participated in the search warrants and the seizures of these assets, they should be commended, because these are really difficult cases to make, and they will be difficult cases to prosecute. And so the community needs to understand that you've got some hardworking men and women here that are really engaging and not just going after simple cases here in Citrus County. They want to make a difference at this moment in time in the middle of an opioid crisis, and I commend them for doing so. As you know, we lose 110,000 Americans every year to overdose. Specifically in Florida, our latest example are showing we're losing over 1,000 to oxycodone, hundreds of people a year to hydrocodone. We even lose hundreds to methadone. So we're not just looking right now in terms of our overdose crisis at fentanyl deaths or carfentanil deaths. We're still struggling with deaths related to oxycodone, hydrocodone, methadone. And so that's why these law enforcement actions are so important. As you know, we secured over $3 billion in resources in the upcoming years to abate this crisis. But we need the community members to understand, and certainly those who may be affected by what's happened here in this announcement today, it's never too late to get help. We set up a resource called doseofrealityfl.com. You can go there. And if you're struggling with addiction, you can always go to treatmentatlas.org. We help launch that here in Florida. That lays out, depending on your location, your financial circumstances, your particular addiction, where you can get help. And so we are always urging Floridians, if you have struggled in the past, if you are struggling now, you can always go to that resource to get help. We know that fentanyl is being laced in every traditional drug you can imagine. DEA is reporting 7 out of 10 of their counterfeit pills that are seized are laced with a lethal dose of fentanyl, which is why we're seeing such a skyrocketing overdose rate in the United States and within Florida. I want to commend law enforcement. Citrus County is showing what they are doing right now to play a part in this crisis. Florida leads the nation in our efforts, our law enforcement efforts. In fact, we are leading in fentanyl seizures. I know there was some fentanyl in this case that was seized. That is because of the great work of law enforcement like those involved in this case. We appreciate you being here to not only shine a light on the incredible action that's announced by the sheriff and the diligent efforts of law enforcement, but also reiterate that we are in a national crisis. Florida is no different, and while our overdose rates are looking better, are trending downward, we can't take our foot off the gas. We are still in a major crisis, and I always want to point out, while we lose 110,000 people a year to opioid overdose deaths across the United States, when we first talked about a crisis, when Nancy Reagan first said just say no to drugs, we were in a crisis then too, and we lost over 3,000 a year. So that disparity should show the magnitude of what we're up against, and I'm just so grateful for the efforts of everyone involved here today. So thank you again, Sheriff Prendergrass. Thank you so much, State Attorney Gladson and DEA ASAC Ferguson, for all of your efforts. There is a reason Florida is leading. There is a reason we are I am cautiously optimistic about the decrease in our overdose deaths, and it's because of great work like this and great casework and case detectives like those who put in the effort to lead to today's announcement. We will be a stronger Florida because of this case, and I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you, again, General Moody, for being here with us today and for all of your diligent work, not only in Tallahassee, but at the national level, to help us all in law enforcement to get this job done and to, more importantly, protect our citizens of the great United States of America. I don't know if we ultimately put this into your news release packet or not, but this is the Pill Mill Clinic over on Gulf to Lake Highway or State Road 44. The address is 7393 West Gulf to Lake. It is closed for business, thanks to the great work by the just amazing detectives from CID and the Tactical Impact Unit, but also, again, to our partners at the Drug Enforcement Administration. Ernest Bernard Scriven, that 8-time convicted felon, you know, the whole list of charges that he faced are enough to write a book just on his original 8 felonies that he's already been to trial for, and yet he was still out there offending in our community. So obviously he did not learn his lesson from the previous times that he served time in prison, but he's going to learn his lesson this time, and hopefully with the great work by our prosecutors, we're going to put him away for a very, very long time so that no more people have to deal with things like this on the streets of Citrus County or anywhere else in the great state of Florida. And the last one, this David Alfonso Enriquez, that we looked for a little while to try and find him, but you know, you can run for a little bit, but ultimately the great detectives, patrol deputies, and our partners among the county sheriff's offices are going to be able to help us find you somewhere in the United States of America. And as I told someone yesterday, there's no state in the union where I won't send one of our great teammates out to pick somebody up if they get picked up somewhere else on charges facing the charges here back in Citrus County. We'll go pick them up, and we've got a great team that doesn't mind going around the country to pick up these wanted fugitives to bring them to justice. So the last thing that I wanted to remind everybody about, as I said earlier, this is an open, ongoing investigation. There are boxes upon boxes of documents that we are pouring through, and we've got a lot of additional work to do. So there will be some additional suspects that face charges in the future. We just don't have their names fully filled out yet, but that will come forward in the days and weeks ahead. And once that does, we'll update everybody about the status of this case. And with that, I can try and answer any questions you might have, or perhaps General Moody or our great state attorney, Mr. Gladson, can answer any questions.
Was any part of this business legitimate? Did it start legitimate, or it was always headed down this road?
You would hope that someone got a license to open a business like that in the great state of Florida, had some legitimacy to it. But based upon these sheer numbers, 3.4 million pills in right at 5 years' time, it's pretty impossible to believe that they would have ever engaged in any legitimate business practices. And again, based on his prior criminal history, I don't think he's got a good bone in his body where he would engage in anything legitimate.
Well, was he licensed? Did he have any kind of license? Nothing.
He did have a business license for a clinic, yes.
But not a doctor's license.
He does not have a doctor's license, no. He is not licensed to practice medicine in the state of Florida or any other state in the United States of America.
Were any licensed doctors involved in this, or how were they making these fake prescriptions happen? Were they, fake names, false identities?
There was a licensed medical provider on the premises of the clinic, and we are still working through the investigative parts with that licensed medical provider.
One or more than one?
One licensed medical provider at the clinic.
Can you give a number on how many other suspects you expect? Is it one? Is it multiple?
Added 0 to that, and then maybe another 0. We don't know yet. It's really our great criminal intelligence analysts that work in our real-time operations center have been pouring through a lot of information that's out there. And then, of course, as well, the super detectives and, of course, our partners at the Drug Enforcement Administration. If you could have been there the day we served this search warrant back in June, a very hot morning where everybody was out there. We were out there from barely sunrise until way into the hours of darkness on the day we served that search warrant. pouring through all of these items there and retrieving documents. And then as the additional search warrants were processed with our state attorney's office, we went to other facilities around Citrus County to obtain additional evidence of crimes that had been committed by Scriven and his accomplices. So it's going to be a substantial amount of hours, and we've already put thousands of hours into this investigation, and we're going to leave no stones unturned to ensure that Scriven faces the maximum penalties allowed by law so that he never comes back out and imperils the citizens of my community and my state.
Circling back to the doctor, you
Street
said that.
value at this point of all that's been confiscated.
Do we have a value of what? Say this question again?
Street value of the drugs and the other.
No, we're working our way through that because some of the vehicles that we seized as well, those vehicles, we have an approximate value based on what they're valued at, but some of them might not be salvageable based upon the deteriorated condition and everything. So once we have that worked up, we'll push that out as a separate update to the this news conference.
Circling back to the licensed doctor that you said, what's his status now? Is he still practicing?
He's not practicing in Citrus County, and his ability to practice medicine is under review by the authorities that have the ability to determine whether or not he can continue to hold on to his license.
Why would he have not been arrested as part of this?
That's a great thing that we're going to work our way through and to be able to come back and answer you. We don't have sufficient evidence right now to charge him, but we are working our way through that process.
Would you say it's safe to say you guys don't have any evidence that this business was ever operating legitimately?
I would say it's safe to say that. There was no legitimate operation to the business whatsoever.
Were there any other facilities that they were operating out of, or it was just?
No, it was just this one medical clinic on Gulf to Lake Highway in Crystal River.
And were all of the or were any of the firearms, the vehicles involved, were those involved in the operation of, carrying out these operations?
No, one batch of the firearms, the ones that were all stolen in 2019, we secured them through one of our 27 search warrants here in Citrus County at a facility that was not a licensed medical facility. It was another facility that Scriven was operating out of, but it was not part of the medical operation.
Of the weapons that were seized from Hernando, was that from?
No, those weapons were seized in Crystal River. They were stolen from a home in Brooksville in Hernando County.
How frustrating is it that something of this magnitude, looking at all of that, you gave the numbers on how many people this could kill, could hurt. How frustrating is it that this was happening in your county?
It's enormously frustrating because we work very hard to make sure that our people have a safe place to live, work, and play. Citrus County is also a tourist mecca. Our numbers for tourism are not like Orlando or some of the other major markets around the state, but tourists want to come here and feel safe. They don't want to have things like this operating under the nose of the citizens of the community, much less law enforcement. But this is a menace to the people of our community and the people of the state of Florida. When you come in and you so cavalierly have zero regard for human life, and you're going to give medications that we know can cause a fatality to based upon the body weight and all of the other things going on with that person, why on earth would you do that? The only thing that person was motivated by, Scriven, as I'm talking about, was greed. Pure profit through this illicit operation. He had no other intention of doing anything good for the community, as evidenced by the stolen firearms that he was secreting for his accomplice in this crime, and all the stolen vehicles, and the heretofore uncounted other things that are out there as we go through these documents. There are Xerox boxes of documents that's going to take us quite some time to go through. And again, we'll find more evidence of additional crimes perhaps, but also we'll probably come up with some additional charges that we'll be able to bring to bear and let the state attorney determine if we can prosecute on those charges. Again, there's no place in Florida for illicit drugs. Properly prescribed drugs have a purpose in our society, and I'm 100% behind properly prescribed drugs to serve the needs of a citizen to take care of an injury or an illness. But none of this was used for the proper purposes. It was all for pure profit motivation by an 8-time convicted felon who could not care less about the citizens that he was harming.
And you said they were pushing these prescriptions through all over the state. It wasn't
It wasn't just here in Citrus County, it was all over the state where they were pushing these prescriptions out and getting picked up by other people, and then they were exchanging cash for the pills.
For the Attorney General, you mentioned that this was reminiscent of pill mills like we saw so many of years ago. Laws were changed to crack down on that. I guess my question is, how does it get to this level now under the current laws?
You know, that's why I'm saying this is something that we have seen, and in fact, when we were speaking before we came out today, this is a typical model of a pill mill. This particular pill mill was on steroids, right? And you're going to hear, and as the evidence gets released over the time to come, you're going to see that there were prescriptions out there to family and friends. I think there were even some written to dead people. I mean, this is where they were trying to get the maximum amount of pills into the maximum amount of hands, and they were taking cash for it. So we had seen that model in the past, but that doesn't mean they're going to go away, because the model was certainly lucrative back then for bad guys. It's lucrative now. Law enforcement just knows what to look for. In this case, they were doing certain things to disguise that this was the classic pill mill, but law enforcement was able to overcome that, go after them, and take them down. And I would just follow up to some of the remarks the sheriff was saying, and I'm glad you asked the question because I wanted to pipe in, but I didn't want to interrupt the esteemed sheriff. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that there were family members or close friends of the people in this community that were getting these illicit prescriptions and going and getting drugs and were probably hooked and addicted on drugs. There's no doubt in my mind that there was a family member or friend that knew something was suspicious at this clinic, that that the person that was getting these drugs didn't have a true medical need, that there was a doctor oversupplying outside the reasonable medical scope of practice. Sometimes a family member is conflicted. I know there is something suspicious going on. I don't quite know what to do. And this is one of the reasons we have created a community line where people can call in anonymously and give tips to law enforcement. And that's through Crime Stoppers, and it's called Star Tips. So no matter where you are in the state, you can just click Star Tip on your cell phone and report anonymously to law enforcement that you think something is amiss, there's criminal activity going on, and it can be followed up on. And there is no doubt in my mind that this investigation could have been started probably earlier if we had someone make that tip. And so I would implore any Floridian that is watching this and saying, how could this go on in our community? How could a pill clinic be giving out so many false prescriptions to people, taking cash, giving it to family and friends? This amount of dosage, now remember, over 3 million dosage of oxycodone and other things, I think 39,000 prescriptions. I mean, that is a lot for one clinic. If you suspect there is wrongdoing, if you want to try and help a family member, a friend, if you want to go after the source of criminal activity, but you don't feel comfortable giving your name, call Star Tips. Even if you do feel comfortable giving your name, help us. You know, we are a government of the people. The folks standing behind you, we're simply trying to do the will of the people and enforcing the laws of the people in order to create a safe environment for everyone, and we need the help of the community to do that. And so this is a great time, a great case to remind the community, you can be a part of this. You can help us shut down pill mills. You can help us make a dent in this opioid crisis by calling Star Tips.
Sheriff, you may have already said this. How long has the operation been ongoing?
I will tell you that we began this operation over 4 years ago. But the way some of these operations exist and how tightly controlled they are, it's awful hard to develop the things that we need to bring to the state attorney and then to be able to start the process to ensure that we have sufficient evidence to take that investigation to the next level. And it took a lot of behind-the-scenes work, and really it was shoe leather by our detectives and our crime analysts looking at things, and the folks that are out there in the community. And you know, you can't overstate how important it is. If you know something's going on, say something. It might save your life, not just the life of someone you love, if you get involved. And you can certainly do so many of these things anonymously. And I can't tell you how many times in the past nearly 8 years I'll be in the checkout line at Walmart, Publix, Winn-Dixie, CVS, Walgreens, somewhere in our community, when one of our citizens will walk up and hand me a folded piece of crumpled paper that they've been carrying around, because they know that I'm always out in the community talking to citizens and engaging with them. And I'll go, Sheriff, I've been looking for you for weeks. Please go check this address out. We believe they're selling drugs out of this house. We believe that there's something going on. And I will tell you that between Captain Novi and Captain Spittle and Colonel Ferrara, 99% of the time, the information that gets handed into us is something we can use. You just never know how it's going to be part of the puzzle pieces that we can finally say, that's the final piece we were looking for. So it's imperative that folks continue to provide that information to us and let us know about it. This took long because we had to abide by the laws. We had to follow our state constitution, the U.S. Constitution, and make sure that everything that we got done in this case would lead to a conviction. There's a lot of work that's going to be transferred onto the shoulders of our great state attorney and his great prosecutors that are out there that will allow this to happen. And they'll be working hand in glove with our detectives and everybody across the agency that was involved in this case, and as well as our federal partners, to make sure that this conviction puts him away for the maximum amount of time possible as allowed by our state constitution. And we want to secure that. But we also want people to understand that if you're going to do stuff like this in Citrus County, we will find you. We're going to follow the law. We're not going to break the laws just to try and put you in jail because you're breaking the law. We're going to follow the law to the finest level of fidelity we have to ensure that we have an outstanding prosecution that no one can overturn on an appeal. And that's what it's really all about at the end of the day. I cannot praise the team in the Citrus County Sheriff's Office, even our dispatchers back in the comm center 2 walls away from this here, for all of their hard work, their peerless support to make sure that we were able to bring this to you today and report it out, but also to remind you that there's other stuff that's going on, and all it takes is a phone call to let us know that so we can do our job to protect our citizens.
One final question, please. Anybody else have a question? No?
If nobody else does, do you at this point have any evidence or reason to believe that maybe any overdose deaths were possibly linked?
I can 100% tell you with 3.4 million prescription medications like this that were abused, that we probably do have some overdose deaths that occurred as a consequence of his operations. It'll be very difficult unless family members come forward and bring evidence to us to be able to gain a prosecution on that. But we know that we've been one of the first counties in the state of Florida to effectively prosecute somebody for an overdose from distributing illegally obtained drugs in our community. I think it's actually 2 in our county that we've secured under our great partnership with our state attorney, Bill Gladson. So we will vigorously pursue that, of course, like we do every one of those other cases when a death is involved. But again, thank you all for being here today. God bless you all, and God bless our great state attorney and our great attorney general and our partners at the DEA. Thank you.